Bud, let's hear your top 10.
All right. So I felt really convicted on 1, and then honestly, like 2 through, I don't know, 17 or 18, I think are pretty, like, honestly pretty arguable. I used the, like, who would I hire right now standpoint, which I think you'll see more towards the bottom of my list. So I went Kirby Smart, Kalen DeBoer, Steve Sarkisian, Ryan Day, Kyle Whittingham, Mike Norvell, Brian Kelly, Lance Leipold, Chris Kleiman, and Dabo Swinney.
Oh, so you do have Dabo in the top 10.
I did keep Dabo in the top 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
There's a lot of things he does well. Like, a lot of these guys have one kind of obvious flaw. Dabo seems to stick out a lot, and that is the unwillingness to use the transfer portal. Save it, Clemson fans, for this. Oh, he's trying. They just can't get anybody nonsense. Like, again, they took 0 people once again. So, but I think there are a lot of things he does really well.
I was hoping we'd get the Dabo conversation started. Danny, you have a top 10?
I do.
Let's go.
So I was trying to go the opposite of Bud because I worry about recency bias. You know, like, so I'm trying to go combination of resume, but also, like, where are you relevant? Like, where are you? We are on the opposite ends of the spectrum with Dabo. So I went Kirby's 1. Like, I don't think anybody's going to argue against Kirby 1. Dabo 2, Brian Kelly 3, Kalen DeBoer 4, Ryan Day 5, Mike Norvell 6, Sark 7, Lincoln Riley 8, Kyle Whittingham 9, and at 10, I have like a 10A and 10B because I want to get one of these in here. I had Dan Lanning and Lance Leipold at 10A and 10B. Because, like, I and you guys know this, every year when we talk about this, I am more impressed with coaches who do more with less.
Yeah.
And Lance Leipold, everywhere he's been, has won with less, including Kansas, which when he took it over was the worst Power 5 program out there. And he's got them back-to-back seasons heading in the right direction. And they're looking good going in, to another season, the Big 12. So I wanted to give him some credit.
My approach is less who you would hire and more of a, like, Hall of Fame voter. Like, I'm not all resume, but I do like to have those this many, like, 10 straight 10-win seasons, this many conference championships, this many playoff appearances. I do like being able to have that hard evidence to back it up. Got Kirby Smart 1, got Dabo Swinney 2, got Ryan Day 3. I got Brian Kelly 4, Kyle Whittingham at 5, Lincoln Riley at 6, Steve Sarkisian at 7, Kalen DeBoer at 8, James Franklin at 9, Mike Gundy at 10. Your Dan Lanning checks in at 11, Mike Norvell checks in at 12. When we're looking at those, opening
disrespect.
Well, here's the Mike Norvell piece that's coming out just as we're having this conversation. I did not give enough to the Memphis success. That when I am taking Norvell's whole body of work together, he did really, really good job at Memphis. He had Memphis running hot. I was probably looking at Mike Norvell and saying, like, this is great, but you just won 10 games. You just won 13 games, 23 wins in a 2-season span. That's fantastic. But some of these other coaches do have a longer track record. That's where he's behind James Franklin, because James Franklin has got this longer track record of being able to, have those consistent 8, 9, 10-win seasons, giving them a slight experience edge, I would say.
I think that's entirely fair. I was like, for me, like 2 through like 15, I think is entirely arguable. Like you want Lane Kiffin over Norvell, you want Jonathan Smith over Kalen DeBoer. I'm not going to fight you on that kind of stuff.
I'm going to fight you over Jonathan Smith over Kalen DeBoer.
I mean, DeBoer is clearly more proven, right?
Right.
Jonathan Smith did a great job at, like, a really low resource program.
Right.
And as won and scored points everywhere he's been. I mean, DeBoer though, because he has won immediately and big at, like, literally every single place he's been. Like, the guy clearly has the ability to dial in and doesn't seem to need the transition year, which is kind of amazing. Although you can look at it, the big question on DeBoer will be, like, are you going to recruit to the Alabama standard?
Correct.
Because at Washington, they did not. All right. Like, most of that
maybe
team.
Do you think relative to
I
resources.
don't think that they maximized Washington's recruiting.
Right.
Most of that team that was not like transfer portaled in was from Chris Peterson's like final 2 classes. So we kind of know what really, really good Washington recruiting looks like, and they didn't accomplish that there. They accomplished a bunch on the field, but as far as like sustainability, that would be the only knock I could see. And if he doesn't maximize Bama's recruiting, he'll be fired in 4 years. So like that's kind of the challenge there.
Steve Sarkisian at 7 or sorry, where do y'all have him?
I had him 7. Is that where you had him too?
Yeah.
See, I had him
3.
right. You had him where?
3. I think the ability to run a big time program like that is a lot harder than people realize, and to get everybody pulling in the same direction is really difficult. I mean, Tom Herman failed miserably. Charlie Strong failed. Like the last couple of years of Mac were pretty rough. That is tough to do. I do think the head coach has a decent bit to do with alignment, and I mean, a lot of these guys are. Like, I don't know if I'd love Sark at a low level program, right? But there is something to be said for, okay, we have a lot of resources. I'm going to be able to allocate them the right way and do it. You know, that's hard to do.
I
that's
love
where I had Sark and Norvell right next to each other, because I think there are some similarities in where the programs were, bringing them both back to prominence, both getting to the playoffs or should have been in the playoffs. So I think there's some similarities. Both of them are fair. Like they haven't won the championship yet, but I think they both could. Like I think they were. That's why I kind of had them next to each other, because I feel like if there was a tier, some sort of category.
Sark has the recruiting piece together that Norvell has not done yet. Like Norvell is not recruiting high school level at Florida State like Florida State should. Like they're killing it in the portal, but like their high school stuff clearly lacks, right? Yeah. And Sarkisian is doing that.
He's doing both. That's the thing is like Sark's approach right now is to be able to dominate both in the portal and also out of high school. And that's how you build a championship team in the modern era with roster construction. I love hearing Steve Sarkisian talk about his program right now and the way that he's, the way that things are going, the roster that he's got together. I mean, it just seems like there's a lot of confidence in they have the right people in place. Now they just got to go do it. And they came one pass away from playing for a national championship last year. Now they're going to come back, restock where they lost some and be one of the top 4 or 5 teams going into the entire country. I give Sark some bonus points in this calculation for, I don't know how else to say it, but like pedigree. I mean, just coming up on those USC staffs as an offensive assistant. When he took over at Washington, they had just had the 0-12 season. So even though in the Pac-12 circles, the 7-win Sark was a little bit of a knock. Yeah, he also got them up to that point. I thought he did a pretty good job with those Huskies teams. Obviously, personal issues made the USC stint go horribly sideways, but then he comes back, does a good job as an offensive coordinator for Alabama. It's like the whole package for Steve Sarkisian seems to have a lot more layers to it right now, where Mike Norvell is still building up that pedigree, I think. I mean, shout out to all of the assistants that came from that Arizona State squad. I don't know why Todd Graham was horrendous at being a head coach, but great at hiring assistants. Seems like all of his old guys have gone off to do pretty good things elsewhere. But that doesn't seem the same to me as what Sark's got, coming up from his path, coming up to where he is right now. And
again, if you're in the top 10, I think everybody would be extremely, extremely happy that you're coaching a football team.
Yes.
There are certain fit questions that I think are more amplified as we get down the list, right? Like, there's certain guys, like, I don't know if I'd want them at a big time program, right? But there are certain guys I don't think I'd want at a small time program. I like that. All right. So outside of your top 10, 12 or so, bud, give me a name that you had trouble with. And let's see what we did. We did this last week, by the way. The show ended. We just turned in our ballots. So we said, where do you have so-and-so? Where do you have so-and-so? Where do you have so-and-so? We realized we had to stop the activity immediately because it was really entertaining. We got to save it for the show. So hit me, bud. All right. So here's one that I still think is a really good coach. And it's just at a program that just can't win nowadays in the NIL era. So I'm like, do I knock him for the drop-off when I think it's entirely related to they just don't have money to keep players, right? Is he a worse coach now because his program just does it's blood from the turnip type situation? And that's Dave Clawson. right? They've fallen off a cliff the last 2 years. I think Dave Clawson's a hell of a coach. The problem is that Dave Clawson's best players now play at Texas and Oklahoma and Notre Dame and elsewhere. Like, you just can't keep them. They get picked over like a Sun Belt team at Wake Forest. So I left him at 24. I mean, I think Dave Clawson's still a hell of a coach. But, I mean, I think Dan Lanning is probably a really damn good coach. Oregon's NIL is also on a completely different level than a lot of other schools out there. So, I mean, I struggled with, like, do I vault him into the top 10? I don't know yet. I think there's some questions there. I basically left Cristobal in the same spot because I thought what he did in high school was really damn good. Obviously, he got worse last year in the in-game coaching stuff. So that's kind of a struggle that I had. I mean, like, I have Mario Cristobal and Matt Campbell right next to each other.
Oh, man.
And I don't think there's a better juxtaposition of I want this guy for a small school, I want this guy for a big school than that right there. Like, I don't know if Matt Campbell wants to recruit the way you need to recruit to be at a top school, right?
This is the debate section right here.
Yes.
I'm looking at it like, so I've got Dave Clawson at 28, and I am thinking like, okay, he's a top 30 coach. There's 60
easily.
There's 60 some odd power conference coaches. He is a plus value coach. What he's been able to do in terms of building out that program to get old and stay old, where it took a couple years, but then they were just running through, 7, 8 wins at Wake Forest, the evaluation of the quarterback and being able to have really good quarterback play across 3 or 4 different quarterbacks, the winning an ACC championship, right? Pitt won that one, but they played for an ACC championship in 2021. So like the resume certainly says you deserve to be in the top half, but then as you're starting to split hairs along the way, it's like I've got Dave Clawson in a world with Willie Fritz and Sonny Dykes, right?
Same. You get in that same kind of 10-spot range, yeah.
So much respect for Willie Fritz and what he's been able to do at being a winner at multiple levels at different kinds of schools. Sonny Dykes obviously just played for the national championship, and what he was able to do at TCU was incredibly impressive. And his Cal teams weren't awful, right?
Not until the very end. Yeah.
Not until the very end. But I think that is a spot when you know in your mind, like Brett Bielema at 25. I think Brett Bielema is a plus value coach. There's just a lot of these coaches. They're so different, but I can make a good argument for them to be a top 30, top 35 coach, but I have a hard time jumping them up in there into like that 15 kind of range.
Where did you have Gundy, Chip?
10.
All right, here's the one I want to know from both you guys that I think is way higher than you guys had him. Where did you have Kirk Ferentz?
24. 39.
The ball's going to come down hard. Especially if he's on, who would you call now? Like, that's one you would not call
if
now.
I'm an AD, I'm not hiring Kirk Ferentz because it's an unwatchable offensive product. I do want to sell tickets, and I don't get to be in the Big Ten West anymore. So
right. But he's still just, I mean, as much as we made fun of them last year and as bad as their offense were, they still had 10 wins. That's insane.
Yeah, that's where it's just all of those successful seasons and just he has put enough in the bank to where I just there's a high floor with the way I'm going to rank it when I'm ranking these guys.
And that's where I would almost put him in a similar tier as or like a category as Kirk Ferentz, because they both had they've both been tenured a really long time. They've both had their share of like flirts with, postseason success and being in the top 5. Both of them feel like they're kind of at similar like points where it could go one way or another, and it could be towards the end, but you could also wouldn't be surprised if Gundy, clearly Big 12 has a potential to really revive the program and all of a sudden be like competing for conference championships. And Bud mentioned doing away with divisions could really impact Iowa's perception in postseason play if they're not sniffing the Big Ten championship and not sniffing the playoffs. But I still think Kirk Ferentz is underrated.
So Mike Gundy, they played for the conference championship in 2021, and were they tied for first place but missed out on the tie? No, they played Texas. So they just played. They were runner-up in the Big 12 in 21 and 23. They had 10-win seasons in 13, 15, 16, 17. the X factor that moves up Gundy for me is that I think he could take the four of us and like, 6 other guys and then one Ollie Gordon and figure out a way to go win a football game. Like there just is something about the Mike Gundy style where it does not matter what the obstacles are, what they have to overcome, or how limited the personnel might be. Like they're just going to figure out a way to go do it. And that's some football coaching type stuff that I've always been very impressed with when it comes to Gundy.
Yeah, I had him 21, and honestly, like I'd be very comfortable somewhere in that like 15 to 23 range ish.
Right.
It's Saban and Harbaugh leaving really did complicate the list here, because I at least for me, there was a lot of like, damn, is this guy really like the 3rd best coach in the sport? Whereas I think you kind of snap call, yeah, no problem with this guy being 5th or 6th, right? Like Kirby so far, massive gap. Everybody else,
yeah, all right, sure. I mean, if I went back to, because somebody, I was on CBS Sports HQ on Saturday, and they said, hey, Clemson just, didn't win 10 games for the first time in a decade. I was like, yeah, they also won 10 games for a decade. It's like, there's like some level of like, appreciation that needs to be offered there. And the fact that you were able to build that kind of consistency, that it was coming with the absence of big time splashy transfer portal additions. And while there were a couple of top 5 classes, we're mostly talking about number 8 to number 14 in terms of your class rank. And then they go out there, develop them, and figure out a way to win 10 games. So one Kirby and then maybe gap. I just don't know if I'm going to say it's as big a gap. I think Dabo Swinney's profile from a coach ranking perspective is very deserving of being the number 2 on this list.
Yeah, I think that's fair. If you're an AD and you're sitting down to hire these guys, you're not giving Kirby Smart a talking to, except maybe about like reminding players about the speed limit, right?
Yes, no, 100%. I know
with
you.
Dabo, it's like hey Dabo, like I'm not paying for past performance, right? You're getting the interview because I believe in your skills, but like we're not doing this no transfer portal stuff. The best teams are going to be heavy high school. They understand they're going to miss on some of the high school evaluations, and they're going to fill those holes with the portal, right? Like I'm not trying to build entirely through the portal, and I'm not trying to do this crazy stuff where I don't use the portal at all. Like that's just nonsense.
It is remarkable. I like Dabo a lot. I have him ranked number 2. But you're being really stubborn at this point, which a lot of coaches can be. You are just being blatantly stubborn at this point by not at least taking a handful.
I mean, like I put him 10, and I'm going to be honest with you guys. If I'm sitting down to run a program here and hiring somebody, I think I would hire Lane over him. I think I would hire James Franklin or Jeff Brom. Like they have shown the ability to adapt to a changing landscape in a way that Dabo has not. I really need some assurances that, like, hey, we are going to change some things here.
His adaptation was bringing in Garrett Riley. I mean, I'm sure that's what he would tell you, but he needs to.
How pissed do you think Garrett Riley is that Dabo's not taking any transfer guys? Because I bet you he's really pissed.
Right. I'd be pushing for it. I wonder if the assistants are pushing for it. Like, come on. Like, let's go.
If things go badly there, I predict you will hear, like, anonymous source assistant coaches from Clemson complaining behind the scenes. Like, if Georgia stomps them out in week 1, watch.
They just turned over some assistants, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
they got Matt Lukin.
Matt Lukin. Yeah. Nick Eason.
But like Garrett Riley is he any closer to a head job than he was when he was the OC at TCU?
No, I think he's further.
I mean, I think Dabo refusing to use the transfer portal is kind of hurting some of these guys' job prospects.
Yeah, and don't let all the portal exits also ball out. Like, don't let DJU have an all ACC type season and Andrew Makuba like have a pick 6 in the playoff for Texas. Like, if the exits are also playing better, then it's a full bit of criticism in terms of your use and also not being able to retain.
Here's why I think
you guys have link. Or sorry, go ahead.
I was to say here's where I think Lane was. I want to get to because he's one of the harder ones I had to rank, or kind of tweener. With Dabo, you're worthy of your rank is when a down season, which we're talking about, is 9 wins, and when he preaches on culture, a lot of programs, and he's done it back-to-back years or for a few years, which is kind of unfortunate. If you're a Clemson fan, you're frustrated by this. When you're out of the playoff race, they don't hang it up. Like they've had pretty good bowl participation. They have had pretty good buy-in. They did bounce back and finish strong last year. So like that's where I think his strength is, where you can overlook. And I agree with you guys, but the culture is really good at Clemson.
I completely agree. I do wonder after Shipley got hurt in the bowl game, does that change? Right?
Right.
Like with Michigan with the who was the tight end who got hurt for Michigan in the Orange Bowl?
But yeah, Jake Butt.
Jake Butt.
It killed his career. He was never the same.
Yeah.
I wonder if like seeing Shipley get hurt up close and then him going, he didn't go undrafted, right? But he went pretty late. I wonder if that changes things.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Where did you guys have Lincoln Riley?
I had
Lincoln in my top 10. I had him 8.
6.
Where'd you have him?
Wow.
I mean, bro, like you just wasted.
Bud, say that again. Watch. Hey, Danny, where'd you have Lincoln Riley?
8.
I had him 6th. Bud, where'd you have Lincoln Riley?
I had him 30th. I think they've done a poor job recruiting high school. You just wasted Caleb Williams. Like it not tough. You stuck with the D coordinator way too long. I mean, it feels like a wasted opportunity to capitalize on momentum when you have Caleb there. I had him behind Marcus Freeman, who beat the crap out of him this year.
All right. If you had Lincoln at 30, where'd you have Freeman?
I had him 29th, and I think he's a guy who has real potential to move up this year. The recruiting is going well. Obviously, they only had 10 men on the field in the loss to Ohio State, so you got to ding him some for that. But I think he's a guy that they understood would have to learn on the job as a head coach. And, you know, like if Notre Dame goes 11-1 this year, like they should with a pretty easy schedule, then, you know, I think they're going to move him up quite a bit.
God, Notre Dame was so close to beating Ohio State, and the way we talk about Notre Dame would be so much different if they had been able to get that last stop, been able to get that win. So the coach that you have ranked 30th is 74-18 as a head coach.
Yeah.
Okay. He's got 4 Power Conference championships, all since 2017.
You can keep going.
He's got 5 top 10 finishes, 6 in the top 13.
Whew. How many games they lose this last year with the number 1 pick? Like one of the best quarterbacks in the history of the sport?
5. He went 5-4 in Pac-12 play. The Pac-12 showed up with a really good conference, and USC stayed coming up short in some of those games.
I mean, if you miss your window to win, I'm going to ding you for that. And I do think that was his window to win. I don't think things are getting better for USC.
If Caleb doesn't pull his hammy in that Pac-12 championship game, though, he's a Pac-12 champ already. Yeah,
maybe. I mean, they still didn't stop Utah at all, but like they would have been a more competitive game for sure.
I was still coming off of COVID. USC had a lead, and our plan was to only podcast if USC lost, because that meant the 4th team in the country had opened it up for someone to walk through. USC was up. I fell asleep on the couch. Then all of a sudden, phone starts buzzing. Chip, we got to go podcast right now. Caleb blew his hammy. USC just blew this chance at a playoff. But I'm not going to ding Lincoln Riley for that. You're still good in my book. Where was Jeff? We've mentioned Jeff Brom twice now. Where'd you have Jeff Brom?
14.
17.
I was the high one on him last year. I moved him up slightly. Like he called a shot. He knew they had an easy schedule, had to take advantage of, and he did it.
I mean, at Western Kentucky, he was sick too.
And he won at Purdue.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are some jobs where nobody ever gets hired out of. Like I was looking at this. I don't think South Carolina has had a head coach promoted out of South Carolina since like World War II. Everybody is either dies on the job, retires, or is fired. Purdue, is Brom the only coach to be promoted out of Purdue? There's got to be somebody else.
No, because all of his success was like the best since Tiller, right? I mean, we were stretching back decades in terms of what he had done over a 2-year cycle. The year before they won the Big Ten West, and the year they won the Big Ten West, that was like the best 2-win window that we had seen maybe since Drew Brees.
In 100 years, when we're all dead, there's a real chance that like, who's the last coach to take Purdue to the Big Ten title game? And the answer is going to be Jeff Brom.
Yeah. I like that a lot.